Imagine yourself under a starry sky, around the warm glow of a sacred fire, where speakers gather to share their wisdom and insights. Creating a sacred space where all are welcome to warm their hands. Here are your hosts, Sarenth Odinson, Snow, Cabra, and Emily Streaking Fate. Discuss spirituality, mythology, animism, and culture around a virtual sacred fire. Won't you join us around Grandfather Fire?
Hail, sons and daughters of Muspelheim. Hail, fire itself. Hail, Miko Eldeveter. Hail, Eldeveter. Hail, Galakahai. Hail, Suna. Hail, Loki. Hail, Glut. Hail, Logi. Hail, Sart. Hail, Sinmora. Aho, Ishkodi Manadu. Aho, Mojakiwas. Hail, and aho, eldest ancestors. Hail, and aho, eldest ancestor. Hail, Mikkel Eldeveter. Hail, Eldeveter. This to Heil, holy ones. Thank you, sacred fire. Thank you for every time we gathered around you, for every time we shared our souls, for every time that we shared our companionship, our company, our triumphs, our sorrows, our wisdom. Thank you for opening so many ways that would not have otherwise been opened. Thank you for guiding so many people who would not otherwise have been guided. Thank you, O constant companion, O blessed ones. Thank you, thank you, thank you for this burning fire at the heart of community, for this burning fire in our hearts. Thank you for cleansing this way. Thank you for blessing this way. Thank you for guiding this way. Hail, eldest ancestor. Hail to the sacred fire of around Grandfather Fire. Let's do Heil. And welcome, welcome, welcome to Around Grandfather Fire, my good friends and co-hosts, Snow, Emily Streaking Fate, and producer Jason. How are you all doing tonight?
Doing all right. I mean, it's an important day, and overall, today doing all right. How about you, Emily?
I am also doing all right. It is lovely weather here, so I've been able to spend some time outside, which is always a plus for the day. About you, Snow?
I'm all right. I had a t-shirt arrive in the post from my wonderful partner that I'm very excited about of one of my favorite wrestlers. So that has been the exciting highlight of my day. But perhaps rather poetically, it also rained a lot today and was raining a lot last night. Uh, and it hasn't rained for a while. So given that this is the show that it is, that seems kind of it's a pathetic fallacy, as English teachers would say. How are you, Saranth?
Ah, I am feeling so much right now. From the perspective of home life, it is great here. The work stress is nowhere near as much as I thought it would be going back to work. Um, the garden is doing great. Everything is green and growing, waiting for the potatoes to break through the earth. And it looks like that should be happening in the next couple of weeks here. And I'm looking forward to the little sprouts breaking through. The herb garden is looking beautiful. The life in general is headed in the right direction. It's heading in a good direction. I had a hard time sleeping before this episode. So, both in terms of the oh my gosh, this is ending kind of feeling, but also from the just the excitement of it. Because sometimes I have a hard time sleeping before episodes.
So I know we've kind of said on the Discord and said on the Patreon and said elsewhere, but just to kind of say it in the episode itself, this is the final episode.
Yeah. And it has been almost 8 years that this show began, and it has been an amazing journey from just Jim and I starting this podcast on kind of a, yeah, uh, so for a little bit of backstory for folks who haven't heard this before, when Jim and I started up around Grandfather Fire, we had done uh, The Jaguar and the Owl, which was a podcast predominantly about Western neo-shamanism for a couple of years, four in all, if I remember correctly. And one of the chief complaints we always had with that show, because it was a Para X affiliate, which is an ABC affiliate. Um, Para X is the network we were on, and the affiliate was an ABC station. We had an hour. We had an hour to talk about our days, to talk about our practice, and then if we had any guests, to bring them on, get a conversation started, and then wrap up so that the next show could start because it was basically a live show. The format grated at us, and it did not allow for much in the way of uh, conversation to get started or to go anywhere. Sometimes we had to bring back a guest in order to get a conversation off the ground. To where we could be actually satisfied with it. It was a very frustrating format, and it was like a every other Tuesday. So it was in a very interesting time slot, a very interesting time of the week, and it was very restricted in what we were going to be talking about because we only had an hour to get into it. So when we decided to start around Grandfather Fire, that really the first thing we turned around and asked ourselves was, what would we have done if we didn't have all these restrictions on top of it? And I mean, hand it to the folks who brought us in. It was a really cool show at the time. But Around Grandfather Fire was the show we, at the end of the day, really wanted to do when we first started. And it got even better when we brought Caitlin on. And I do firmly feel like we transferred it into really good hands when Snow and Emily and Jason came on the show and Jim and Caitlin left. And it's been an honor to do this show for these 7.5 years. And Cabra, yeah. And I apologize, Cabra. My brain is just all over the firing on different cylinders tonight. And one of the things that reflecting over the years that has been really neat is how everybody who has come on this show brings some not only beautiful insights, but avenues of thought that wouldn't otherwise be present. And so that for me has been one of the highlights of co-hosting this show is getting to hear everybody's perspectives, getting to hear everybody's reflections. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you folks.
Well, I mean, I was very surprised to be asked to join, and kind of was surprised and honored and said yes. And then it was now. I don't know. I mean, for those on the outside, it seemed kind of sudden and random that the Three Musketeers were changing lineup, and suddenly you'd got four Avengers instead. Um, and then a bit of a shuffle when Cabra moved them goatee selves to another meadow. Yeah, I don't know.
I was very glad when Sarenth decided not to try to carry it on as a solo venture. That
Yes,
was his initial thought, and with the help of many, I am very glad that we persuaded him not to try to do all of it himself.
I mean we berated Sarenth out of it. I'm just yelling at him when he's like, "It's all right, I'll do it myself." I'm like, "Wait a second, so you're gonna write the script, you're gonna book guests, you're gonna find the guests, you're gonna do the topics, and you're gonna edit it, and you can produce it, and you're gonna record it, and you're going to kind of talk on the show itself, and you're going to promote it, and you're going to."
See, when you
Uh,
put it that way, it sounds monumentally fucking stupid.
that's what you said at the
Mhm.
time, and I was like, "Yes, yes, it is because it is. Don't do it yourself."
Yeah,
And
that was a concerted effort, and I
mm,
very much appreciate everyone that contributed to convincing Sarenth to not solo go it.
and thank you, producer Jason, for making things much easier in the engine room.
And that's no problem. Um, and really just like, for myself joining in, really, what's turning into on the other side of being closer to a decade than not a decade, um, of being around the grandfather fire. Hey, um, uh, and starting out as just like a member, then getting the honor to be like to be a moderator as the Discord grew. That was genuinely like a really kind of amazing thing, and be able to help out and do back when we were doing discussion nights, being a host for discussion nights, um, and really kind of taking that transition over into being just like, hey, Jason, editing stuff. Could you maybe help out with this? And then kind of falling into, really that producer role and just being able to help out with the show has been amazing. And then it's just like, oh, how long have we been doing this? Oh, I haven't been doing it that long. What, maybe a year? And then it's like a year and a half, 2 years. It's like, oh, wow, that flew by.
Right.
Around the fire, time burns.
Yes, quickly,
Mm,
swiftly, even.
blazing.
So, Emily, you were reminiscing a little bit on reflecting on your time as a co-host. I wasn't sure if you had finished.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking about it's always exciting to have an extra reason to have Jason over. Um, that was an added benefit for Jason doing the audio. I started as a fan way back when, living in a different state, and through AGF is how I met a number of really good friends and partners and moved to Michigan. So it was a surprisingly key part of my life. If I actually think back on, because I only got to know Sarenth through AGF initially, and I only took that step to get to know Sarenth because of having him vetted through everybody else on AGF and saying what a quality person that they were. And that was like, what, 4 years ago at this point almost?
Yeah, almost five, I want to
Almost.
say.
5.
Yeah.
I've been in Michigan for probably 3.5
Mm-hmm.
years, and so it was probably like 5 or so years ago, 5 or more years ago that I started being on AGF. Uh, so yeah, maybe 6.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wild to me. So,
I
oh, go ahead,
wonder if
Scott.
I wonder if it would, because some of our community members and audience have given us some questions. I'm wondering if that'll maybe help structure this and
That,
make it a bit easier rather than us each sitting there going, you talk about your reflections now, and you talk about your reflections, and because generally fire isn't very reflective. Things reflect fire.
yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, so I guess to start off with, long time listener and acquaintance of the show, Mother Multiverse, said, so paganism is growing pretty rapidly. How do we, as a pagan community, weed out bad actors as we grow to avoid the institutional corruptions plaguing many mainstream religious organizations? And I guess to kind of tangent off that, sort of how have we seen the pagan community change since we first encountered AGF and prior to and since? Go.
I think one of the biggest things in the almost 8 years that AGF has been around has been more groups being pushed from within to take accountability. And I really will hand this to the pagan communities that although many of them, if not all of them that I've seen, have moved incredibly much slower than I would like them to. The fact that they moved at all to excise problematic people from within their ranks should say something about where many of our community members stand. The fact that we have more orgs willing to toss out old time elders and not honor them as elders anymore, that is a big fucking deal. Um, I think that's one of the things that actually does differentiate us from a lot of mainstream religious organizations because you'll have people who will have gross abuses of power and they will stay elders within the church or within that community or this community. And, there's an increasing intolerance for that. It's one of the things that I think is very hopeful about paganism writ large is that not only will we point at our bad actors, we'll out them and then we'll get rid of them. That is a big step forward that I'm seeing in a lot of communities. Um, the fact that we're even willing to do that and take away people's emeritus status is a big deal.
I think the other thing as well is because of, when it comes, particularly as compared to more formalized religious institutions, is that the forums and dialogues for paganism right now are exceedingly open, meaning that if someone sees something, or if multiple people see something or hear something, they're going to go out and be like, hey, what is this? What's going on? Why are you saying this? Why are you acting this way? And there's a degree of willingness to not only challenge those who, may be an elder or maybe someone in a seat of authority, but also willingness to go, oh, if you're not willing to change your ways, I'm just going to go somewhere else. Like, because there is no just, there's no one big place that we all get together. And while the idea that is really nice, by being more modal, it allows us to actually be like, oh no, you're not doing this correctly, or no, you are a problematic individual. I want nothing to do with you. Me and all the people that agree with myself, we're just going to go somewhere else. If if they cannot be held accountable and removed for whatever reason.
Yeah, I think the ability to ask questions, to point things out, use the methods of communication with others that we have to broadcast our concerns. Saranth, I think, did a TikTok and probably did a post about what it means to be like an elder versus someone that has just time in the community. And I do think holding our elders to the standard of, are you contributing to the community, and holding like everybody to the standard, like, are you giving what you are able to give to the community? Are you taking from the community in a harmful way? And communicating the lack of tolerance for harm to the community. I don't think that we will be able to totally avoid falling into some of those pitfalls. I think it's just how quickly can we pull ourselves out of them when we do. I do think when you are able to share power, have elected stations, have people switching out so that it's not like one person holding all the power for ever type of thing. I think that helps. Um, and I think try not to idealize certain or idolize certain positions over others. Um, Honoring people for all the different types of important work that make the community able to flow as well as it does, instead of putting certain positions on pedestals above other positions that are just as useful but maybe not as flashy. And I think we are stepping into doing that more and more, giving people their due and recognition for everything that they are able to contribute.
Hmm. Um, well, I mean, I think there are lots of things here. And I think it also kind of connects to another question we got from Kunyan about how we've developed opinions on online spiritual community as well. Because I mean, for us being a podcast, a lot of this is online. Obviously, I mean, three of you are in Michigan and I am not. Um, I mean, I think it's very easy to lose sight of how fragmented a lot of this is, in that it's very easy for people, regardless of religious path, tradition, persuasion, background, what have you, to feel like their thing is a monolith. So a lot of people coming from a certain Christian background think all Christianity is like that. Or if they don't intentionally think that, they kind of talk in those terms as if they've kind of adopted that concept subconsciously. And I think we see a lot of that in paganism as well, where if someone has a group of 20 that they meet with at the weekend to do a ritual, or if someone is in a Discord server with 500 people or whatever, they feel like that is representative of pagandom at large globally. And it's very easy to lose sight of the fact that it isn't, and things are much more fragmented than that, much more disparate than that, which has its own pros and cons. Um, I think part of it is with any group of people, you are part of a larger society as individuals. As a group or as a community or as a movement, you might feel like you're adjacent to the mainstream society or you're underneath the mainstream society. But once you're individuals with day jobs, you're part of the mainstream society. You know, once you're individuals with mortgages and rents and things, you are part of that mainstream society. And so all the problems within that mainstream society, regardless of where in the world or when it is, are going to pop up in the community or the group regardless. And so I think because there are people with socio-political views that we might disagree with or strongly object to or find awful, and people who are, you know, malicious or abusive or what have you in society at large, just purely objectively statistically, they are going to pop up in communities. And so I feel like a lot of that has to kind of be dealt with on a case by case basis. Um, yeah.
Well said. No, I seriously, well said. I mean, because that is one of the things that it gets really easy to lose sight of because it's one of the things that Norstalk was dealing with. It's one of the things that Tumblr deals with in cycles, where you get siloed into these very particular hashtags or communities or what have you, depending on the social media you're involved in. I mean, it's very easy to sit in a Discord of 200 to 300 to 500 people and be like, yes, this is definitely what every pagan community is like.
Right.
And it's really not. Like actually going to on the ground stuff like your local pagan pride day if there is one or your local orgs is also hugely important, not just because showing up is a big deal, but then the community gets to reflect you too.
I mean, so much of it is contextual, and we forget that. I mean, if you took a large organization that is international, like OBOD or ADF or something, a grove that you got in one part of the UK, the individuals there are going to be there for different reasons and want different things out of it than if they were in another part of the UK, than if they were in any location in the US or a different location in the US or somewhere in Canada or what have you. I mean, from personal experience, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that can sort of speak to this. Heathens often kind of talk and feel like they're on the cutting edge of things and pushing heathenry at large forwards. And then the second you look over your shoulder or go next door to see what the heathens there are doing, you go, oh, right, it's 2003 here. Because
Hmm.
the little bubble that you're used to being in, you kind of feel has become the world. And then you kind of go, all right, other people are just kind of content doing their own thing in other places. And I'm, preaching to the converted here, which
Yep.
can happen a lot.
The amount of people that are still using the hammer right is amazing to me. Like, it's not a bad thing. Like, use what works, but it really did strike me as, huh, all right. Because when I came into paganism like 21 years ago, that was the done thing because many heathens had not yet shed, or many heathens were still part of many Wiccan communities. So the
Hmm.
Hammerite was just a natural fit. Now there's an entire generation of heathens who have never been inside of a Wiccan circle, which is wild to me because I have been through plenty.
Yeah. But I mean, at the same time, there are also plenty of heathens out there who feel like heathenry might just be Wicca, but you swap out some names.
Hmm.
And that's just how they do things. And even if they aren't coming through Wicca, the people around them might have. So then that's rubbing off on them and how they view and do things. And that just works for them. Um, I mean, I feel like I've been very conscious of this disconnect and the fact that there are
Hmm.
these bubbles. And I would like to think that my, or I'll say our, reaching out to different guests from different backgrounds and different traditions and stuff as guests on the show has kind of helped to kind of recognize and address that because we haven't just gone, oh, hey, I know six heathens, they can be the next six guests. And we've gone and got Thelemites on, and we've got Hermeticists on, and we've got Freemasons on, and we've got witches and Wiccans and Satanists and all kinds of things on to try and build bridges and check out what the neighbors are doing and these kinds of things and try and address the fact that maybe we get too comfy with our own insular bubbles.
Yeah, I honestly think this is where shows like AGF, Glitch Bottle, and others, Feed the Fairies, this is where so many of these podcasts fulfill a very vital place in our communities because if all you're doing is talking in your own circles and in your own bubbles, I mean, that's great for what it is. But if nobody else gets to hear these conversations, that's where miscommunication and diverging opinions don't get heard, right? Because they're not part of your community, they don't get heard. And the entire impetus for Around Grandfather Fire was to give people of different walks of life a place to gather around, sit around a sacred fire digitally, and share what they had to share. And that was kind of always the ethos when we actually were doing sacred fires for almost 10 years at um, Michigan Pagan Fest. So that was the entire reason for carrying the title that we have is for that purpose.
And I think especially because, I mean, people talk about how mass media and the internet and things have changed things, and now we have all these echo chambers. But I would suggest that there have always been echo chambers because
Always.
if the only people you know are the six people in your village, then you're gonna hear those six opinions.
I mean, this goes back to like the 70s, right? Like Green Egg was the magazine where if you wanted to have an argument with somebody in the pagan community, you had to wait a couple months for your issue to come in.
Yeah, it's like I remember my grandparents going, "Ah, these days everyone's just stabbing everybody else," and you're sitting there like, "I'm pretty sure in like Birmingham and London, they've always had people stabbing each other. There's just more people. Statistically, it's more likely. You just didn't hear about it then, and if you did, it took a lot
Mm.
longer to get there. Whereas now you hear about it straight away because the internet." Um, and I mean, I think the more insular things are, and the more things become echo chambers, the more abrasive people find different opinions. And so I think it helps us to suggest different things and to get people to question why they react the way they do or how they react and sort of weigh things up, which again I think is kind of one of the pluses of what we've tried to do with the show, where we haven't always agreed with everything each other have said, never mind all of the guests. But it's kind of sitting there and hearing it and weighing it up and mulling it over, and then you either run with it or you just go, well, that works for you, cool. No one's getting hurt, so go for it.
And that is to say, there's always, of course, if we're talking specifically online communities, is also there is the veil of anonymity when it comes into all of this as well, which is people who maybe don't feel as comfortable being outwardly expressive in their day-to-day lives. It is far more plausible to do so on an online forum, something like AGF or something, Three Pods, IO, something like that. And this allows, I think, a lot of space for people to be more expressive than they just than they typically would be. Maybe they are not very open with their immediate family, with their current, maybe pagan practices, and they go, and they start to feel, insular, locked away. I maybe they don't have anyone that they can hang out in a pagan space or talk about things like this, and the next closest person is 150 miles away or 200 kilometers away, whatever. And the point being is that now that we have this open space where people can communicate, obviously things can get very pigeonholy if you're not very careful. Um, but and then and that's just the weakness of it being an online forum is you can tailor everything to exactly what you want to see because that's what you like, and you tailor it to what you like, and then therefore you start missing things. But there's still this idea of I know we said like we bring everyone in and we do this and the other thing, and I think like a major strength of it is also, but it allows for the little singular points where people go like, oh, actually, you know what, this is important. Uh, I took part once upon a time, probably geez, almost 2 years ago now. Oof, I was part of. I got to take part in an audio play for the Bacchae, if we're about to play the Bacchae, and it was with people that, boy howdy, we did not agree about pretty much anything, but we knew that the play was important, and like just as a community, we had about like 100, people show up, and that was a wonderful thing. And then but it allowed for all these people that's like we had differing opinions, we would argue, bicker, this and the other thing just about daily, but it's like no, this is important though. We can actually we're all technically, we're all following some form of hermeticism, and so therefore we're all like, hey, let's focus on this. And then, but I think AGF, where particularly with AGF and with a couple other shows that are like it, is the idea of you're not alone. And I think that's really, really, really important is to go, yeah, you've had these experiences. Yes, you have this understanding. Yes, you've gone through, you've read these books, you've done all the work, you've done these things, and you're like, but does anyone else even remotely understand this in the way that I do? Or maybe they have no idea at all and they're just getting started, like I was when I first got into all this. And someplace like AGF is where you can go in and be like, hey, has anyone else experienced this? And you may get 15 people going, I have no idea what the heck you're talking about. But then you find 5 or 6 people that are like, absolutely. Did you notice like this? I got this. Yeah, let's go. Like, and then you can build consensus off of that. And all of a sudden you go from having consensus and a couple people agreeing to forming communities and just really end up building something important. And all that comes about just by having this access that is strictly, I think, right now, mostly available online. To get these other sort of connections, again, as was brought up, you'd have to go through the newspaper. You'd have to go, you would have to put out flyers and hope people showed up to your local discussion nights and things like that.
Those of us who remember the yellow pages.
For those of us who remember the yellow pages. Or even in the very early years, who remembers AOL chat rooms?
Heck, who remembers Witchbox? God, yeah. AOL chat rooms, Usenet before them.
Usenet, and just it's like, oh, well, where are you getting this information from? Wherever. I mean, no, sorry.
Oh no, go on. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was scrolling through some random stuff. I was looking up some trying to find a specific passage for something, and I ended up in all places on a subreddit that had been going on for 15 years about this topic, and it's just like it's like three people.
I forgot this has been a thing for a while now. Like
yeah. Yeah, exactly, right? It's like, and it was like it was like the same 3 people talking to each other and having a small community, just having a discussion post over 15 years about a specific topic, which is fascinating. But that is something that the online community can bring. And something like AGF gives air to these spaces. And I think that's really, really important because it allows people to not only maybe find something that intrigues them, but helps them feel like, oh, wait a minute, there are other people that understand this in the way that I do, or at least close to it. I'm not alone in this.
I mean, off of that, I just wanted to say for anyone kind of wondering or concerned, we are absolutely planning on renovating the Discord server so it will pivot from being a Discord server oriented around the podcast to being a space for community discussion, wider community, and a wider discussion on various things that you would have expected to hear us talk about on the podcast or that we might have talked about on different episodes. So the server's getting a facelift and will still be around in a new form. It's going to Pokevolve or Digivolve, depending on your Japanese franchise preference.
I was just going to jump in and say that I've had so many amazing experiences with different online spiritual communities. And I think the accessibility that they provide is like, you can't really match that. I do think one of the major weaknesses is learning to understand your own personal boundaries and when you need to like take a step back or give yourself time off. And also recognizing other people's personal and social boundaries, which is a little harder in an online space.
I'm sorry, hang on. You said time off. Could you just to pause for a moment? Could you explain to Saranth what that is?
I have tried many, many, many times.
So seventh time off is when you don't work and you don't start a new project and you don't suddenly decide to start writing 7 books and you don't suddenly do a video series. You kind of don't do anything, or you just do stuff that kind of doesn't quote unquote produce anything. It's just fun and or relaxing.
Uh-huh.
I because because of how Sarenth's brain works, I think his closest version of time off is a relaxing video game. Because that engages his mind just enough to keep it from picking up 10 other projects. But it is also, depending on the game, can be relaxing and calming and allow him a certain type of rest that he will not otherwise get. I think that's the closest he can get to time off. Power Wash Simulator.
But yes, I mean what you just said and what Jason was saying earlier, it just made me think as well that it's also worth saying that sort of reaching out and having this openness and considering different things and considering alternatives and whatnot also comes with the balance of still knowing what you're there for and what you're looking for and why you're there and why everyone else is there. And if there's a given community, what's holding the community together and what the space is for. Because otherwise, everything's kind of diluted into meaninglessness. And so that's kind of, to use the buzzwords of the today's zeitgeist, the good part of gatekeeping is kind of going, this space is for this thing. If you're going too far from this thing, then it's just not for this space. And, if we're all here to do the pagan thing and someone is coming to do something that has absolutely nothing to do with it whatsoever, as opposed to tangentially different or slightly pivoted or from another angle, but just completely unrelated, then it's, it needn't be there.
It's one of those. Oh, go ahead, please.
I was just gonna say quickly, I do think also in online spiritual spaces, it can A, be harder for people to recognize the contribution that they make just by being present, and B, harder for people to recognize where they might be able to help out more if they want to. Realizing the value that they have and the value that they can bring, I think, is a little bit more easily identifiable when it's an in-person group as opposed to an online space. Go ahead, Sarenth.
I think it's one of those things where this is where individual pagan communities can really shine online, because when you have a really focused community like around Grandfather Fire, went through periods of intense focus. And honestly, it's funny how much like a sacred fire this place is. Sorry, I thought this was muted completely. Okay, let me retry that. I uh, I think it's really funny how very like a sacred fire these communities are, like especially if they are hooked into a podcast. Uh, AGF has gone through periods of really high intensity emotion, really high intensity of practice, so where people were sharing a lot about personal practice, praxis, experiences. And then there were other times where just memes, the memes flowed. And honestly, this was my experience of sitting around a sacred fire, because you'd have these periods where you're just sitting around and you're occasionally poking the fire and occasionally putting in a handful of offerings. And, you might not do anything for 8 hours. And then suddenly, all of a sudden, boom, 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 you've got three, four, five people in a row who come around the sacred fire and are like, "Oh my gosh, I really need this intense spiritual help right now." And the sacred fire tenders are firing off. All right, this person go over here, this person go over there. I remember several occasions where Storm and I would take people aside around the sacred fire and have really intense spirit work conversations. And And then we come back, and then we would be shooting the shit around the sacred fire. And so it's really funny to me how many of these community spaces can operate a lot like that. And one of the worst things you could do would be to try to corral that, because there's no way that you can like make the fire do something it's not going to do. The fire is a community space. The community is going to do what the community does. And unless we were specifically doing a workshop in front of the sacred fire, you kind of had to go with the flow of wherever the sacred fire took you. And that is very much how this community has been for me. And it's very unlike other community spaces in that regard, where you might have a real serious focus. Like I'm thinking Skith Blathnir, for instance, has a very tight focus in terms of like what it's about. And it's just about that. Now, there's tons of sub topics you can dive into, like homesteading or something, but it's always through that heathen lens. Whereas AGF is like a conglomeration of voices. So I think that's also something that's been interesting to see happen in other community spaces where these kinds of atmospheres have been developing.
I mean, I know I've kind of made this point before in various ways, but I always also think it's worth remembering that for a lot of people who get into paganism or get into occultism and whatnot, it's the people who are naturally wired or inclined to look for alternatives and to look for alternative things. And if you're going to go out of your way to peruse the other options out there, and then with such commitment that you're then going to get involved with the communities and adopt a regular practice and so on, then some part of you is naturally wired to be curious, to question things, maybe to be a bit contrarian, which then also gives us some of the challenges that we have with pagan communities, but is also why we see so many crossovers with things like people who were into paganism who were also into metal, or people who are into paganism who were also into horror films, or all the things that are outside of the popular mainstream of when and where they're living. And so, I mean, to your point about the community's going to do what the community's going to do, and it's like, yeah, because some part of the community is naturally wired, so it's like herding cats.
Yeah. No, you're right, though. You're right, though. Paganism and wrestling, yes.
Has anyone ever mentioned wrestling on this show before? We could do
Not
that.
once.
Never. Certainly not in the before or after shows. Never has wrestling ever been mentioned.
I'm still a little sad that we did not have an episode where we dressed up like our wrestling personas.
Oh, God. I forgot about that.
Super secret bonus episode coming near you.
For those of you listening who haven't managed to join us for the live recording, amongst the many wonderful people we have in the chat, we have Sif in the chat, who's been on the show a couple of times. And I'm sure the Patreon members will have heard that after Sif was on the show for the second time, we got her into pro wrestling.
This is what we do to people.
She's just in the chat going, "Oh no."
The true religion, professional wrestling.
Yes.
I mean, it's got everything. You could definitely rejigger it to be a devotional activity for multiple gods.
Oh,
Absolutely.
no,
Absolutely.
no.
Oh,
I
yeah.
object.
Oh yeah,
That is one too far.
Snow is going, please keep your peas away from my carrots.
just imagine. Could you imagine somebody coming
I
on
don't-
and
I don't
calling
want-
herself mated?
I don't want religion where they've already worked out the conclusions. I don't want scripted religion. Like, it really hurts, but we know how it's going to end. I don't want this.
I'm just imagining
Oh.
Triple H up on a cross for some reason. It's weird.
I mean, The Undertaker did crucify some people.
Mhm.
Raven did
See?
crucify Sandman.
Look, Royal Rumble takes on a whole new meaning when it just
And
turns
we've
into a
also-
battle of the gods.
Yeah. I mean, we've also just hit another pagan cliche that we've all just reverted back to Christianity here, because we went straight to just crucify people.
I mean, if you really want to make it interesting, the heel turn for Loki will be really fun in the future season.
I mean, I'm sure Disney Marvel are already doing that.
Oh my God. If they had any brains between them.
Oh,
Oh no, oh no, Loki's coming off the top rope.
so should we have another question?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Here,
Okay.
here. Let's pivot to what have been some of your favorite moments with shows, guests, or listeners?
I'm actually really happy this was the second question because I
And this
think
came from
she would
Remy,
know.
who
Yeah.
is co-administrator of aforementioned Skidbladnir, the Heathen Discord server connected to the Longship.net, whose author Gunny was on AGF many moons ago.
Remy is also the friend of bees.
Indeed. So, who
Bees.
has a favorite guest, or I should say a favorite kind of moment with a guest rather than a favorite guest? Let's not just start being like, well, I really like this person and fuck the rest. No, favorite moments with guests or favorite moments with the AGF community.
Uh, just as a reminder to folks, AGF 21 was when Gunny was on, and that was back May 13th of 2019. It was a while ago.
Yeah. I mean, my first thought for favorite moments with guests would be when we had Reverend Eric on and Keytars happened. And we spent most of the episode just apologizing to Jason.
I will admit that might be my favorite, especially as producer. I think that was my favorite. I had so much fun just whenever they mentioned it, putting in the sound bites. Did it cost me like an extra hour? Yes, but it was totally worth it.
This is why we
Wait,
love our Jason.
for those of you who haven't listened to it, just as we were recording it, I'm sure every 10, 15 minutes to be like, okay, here, if you guys could edit in this sound because my keytar isn't hooked up properly. So if you could sort that out, I'm like, yeah, sure, we'll get Jason to do it.
Mhm.
Sorry, Jason.
It was it was genuinely a blast because everyone left just enough time for me to slot in the notes, whether intentionally or otherwise, because you could do the pause and be like, click. It's like, did that come through? Oh, I don't think so. But then they eventually fixed it and they went through the notes, and it's just like perfect. I can work this back in.
Because
Or
after the
sometimes,
fact, yeah, after the fact, Rev Eric just messaged me and went, here's a bunch of audio files on my keytar just in case.
mhm.
Send these to Jason. If
it
you don't put
was
them in the show, he can add them as an addendum.
it was genuinely an absolute blast just to be just like going through and adding in these little sound bites and everything like that, especially for the ones that's like, I want you to take this one and I want you to draw it out and then I want you to add some reverb.
Yeah. And Donald Duck in Math Magic Land also came up, so that's on the episode page on
Yes.
the aroundgrandfatherfire.com. It was a roller coaster of an episode when we had Rev Eric
That
on.
was a lot of fun.
So
Hmm.
that's what I'm gonna say. What are you guys gonna say?
Um, I had a couple. One of them included Sif's episode, which I feel kind of silly since they're on right now. But when we pointed out to them that maybe they were a sacred like myth maker and talked about that, I don't remember if that was part of in the episode or after the episode. I feel like we piled on Sif for a lot of things after the episode. But I thought that was a lot of fun talking about sacred myth making. And it just reminded me of how much people do in their life and in their practice and maybe don't fully realize what the full extent of what they're already doing. What about you, Santh?
Oh God, it's like when I saw the actual question, I was like, wow, I really got to like sit back and think about some favorite episodes. I loved having Gunny on. Another really big one for the show was AGF 36, which was the Patreon launch and the Discord questions, the first ones we had. So that's all the way back in January 27th, 2020. Um, The one of the big ones that has made perhaps one of the biggest impacts on my practice, it's found its way into my workshops, and it has found its way into the books I'm writing, into the blog. I write blogs now, is the episode AGF 60, which was Aphantasia and Spirituality, the interview with Eric G. Martinez, where he came on and talked about, as a neuropsychologist and philosopher, where he talked about aphantasia, SDAM, and visualization and spirituality. That has made a huge impact on how I teach magic, spirituality, and religion. And it came from somebody who was completely outside of our circles. It was such a big deal. I'm so grateful that Jim brought them on because being able to sit down and go, oh, neat. So that's what that's like. And then seeing how much teaching in the communities skewed towards the visual and working to correct that has been big. I know it's been a big meme within this particular community of AGF, but it also has reached outside of it too. Another episode that really stuck with me was AGF 66, where we had Rune on. Um, Dialoguing with Rune both on this episode and offline has been a treat. And the Year of Aun was a big deal, which was episode 89. We actually, in this household and that year, participated in a Year of Aun ritual. And that was hugely impactful to the local communities and to myself as well, just on a personal level. Um, God, there's so many episodes I could go through. Um,
I mean, just a couple more off the top of my head. As a listener before I was on the show, I'd say when you had Dr. Edward Butler on, because regardless of what people think of him or his work or his associations or however people want to kind of view or skew that or whatever, it got me thinking about Platonism in a different way and really
mm,
got me further into actually thinking more seriously about philosophy and theology, which I think it's fair to say at this point is maybe something I'm kind of more known for getting into. So maybe I wouldn't have if it weren't for things like that. Um, and then on the show, I think some of the episodes I'm maybe the most proud of are when we've had people like Marco Visconti on and Dr. Justin Sledge because they're kind of so far outside of what we do and are kind of known entities with their own works and such and their own audiences in their own right. So it was really cool to be able to talk to them and have those conversations there.
yeah, I think if I was to pick a more recent episode that I was really proud of, I think it would be the one where we brought Mother Tree Shamanism on because this show started talking about shamanism from a more neo-shamanic perspective and bringing on folks who are learning and are involved in living shamanic traditions from Mongolia was something I'd always wanted to bring on the show, and then was like, oh shit, we can do that now. um, Kind of a big deal, like personally for me, was having these folks on and being able to talk shop and across different religious pathways. I mean, that's been honestly a large part of like you said with Marco Visconti, with Reverend Eric, with Lennon, with name a person. Like damn near every time we bring on somebody, even if they're related to the heathen community, they're bringing something new and fresh to the table, and that's always been a really refreshing part of doing this show. It's part of why I've been happy to do it for so long. Is that you know we might share a lot of similarities, but even in the particulars, the differences are important, and how we get to where we get to is really important. And the fact that people are vulnerable and willing to share, I think that's one of the things about AGF that has made me the proudest is that, and it's something that I've heard people comment out in the wild if I'm out roaming around a convention where we were able to get somebody to really open up in a way that they wouldn't in, say, an interview set up by um, through more formal means. Like if somebody's doing an official interview for a book through their publisher, they might not go into this, that, or the other depth because it's supposed to be about one thing. It's one of the things I love about this show.
And it's also interesting as well when we have had guests who are people that we know personally or have been acquainted with a long time because you're having a conversation with them in a very different setting. Like they're in front of a microphone and there's an audience and you're sort of talking shop with them. And so often you see a different side of them than if you were just hanging out or whatever.
Yeah, and I think actually kind of one of my favorite things actually is kind of more on the listener side of things. Back when we were doing discussion nights, I can't remember if it was myself hosting, Josie hosting, or Branadoff hosting at the time. Um, but it was kind of that same idea that we had just had a large influx of people who practice chaos magic, and it was just all of a sudden all of us happened to be on the same call at the same time, and we all sat down and started and we talked shop for chaos magic. I think for about 4 or 5 hours.
Easily.
Like it was a like it started at 9 and it finished sometime around 2 or 3 a.m. and this and the sort of that kind of like communal aspect of it, of just being like, I don't know what happened. And I mean, we had every opinion from just like, no, this is chaos magic is kind of just this thing I do alongside of this other thing I do. And we had people being just like, look it, you should just do shit. Just go out there, poke it. If it hurts, that means you're experiencing it truly. And it's like, oh my good golly goodness, what the heck are you talking about? And but it was really just, and then it was everything from just like, hey, do you believe that if you build a servitor, is it family? It's like, why are we on this topic? How did we get here? And but it was just that wonderful, thing of just the people in the community just being willing to not only throw their 2 cents in, which is great, and I really, really enjoy seeing, but also willing to engage and be just not just like, oh, here's my 2 cents, have someone else go, oh, I really like that idea. Here's my thing on this. Or it'd be like, that sounds insane. Please explain more because now I'm currently concerned.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I appreciate about the AGF community is that kind of sense of give and take and to and fro, and that we have these conversations and dialogues. I mean, if everyone was entirely honest with themselves, being a mod or being someone who's given workshops or done talks or being a co-host of the show does come with some degree of implicit kind of soft power. So you start talking and suddenly everyone maybe listens a bit harder, whether we like it or not. That's just kind of the reality of it. But even then, the fact that people are willing to still disagree about things, but respectfully and kind of consider each other's opinions and stuff is really good. And kind of related to that as well. I mean, I don't want to speak for Emily or Cabra, but I would imagine they probably feel similar in that when we came onto the show and it was nice that if there were people going, screw you guys, we want the old people back, that they didn't come out and just start saying that ad infinitum. No, everyone was saying nice things and everyone seemed kind of okay with us getting the jobs. And were very welcoming and supportive, and that was good because, I mean, the trio were well loved by the community. And whenever there's kind of a big cast shake-up in anything, there's always the case of, well, will the ship sink with them, you know? But we seem to do okay. I mean, I don't know if Emily or Cabra had kind of comparable thoughts with coming onto the show about kind of being accepted or rejected by the community, but it went much more positively than it could have done. So that was nice.
I would agree with Snow. I think the AGF community has been extremely supportive in so many ways. And I was hesitant with the change because it was such a big change. 2/3 of the hosts that were well loved and well known. but I had hoped that it would go well, just knowing the community for so long, and assuming that they would hope for the best and support us as much as they could, which is what happened. And it was a very, words are escaping me. I felt very supportive and like everybody was rooting for us through the shift, despite the fact that everyone was also probably sad to see Jim and Storm take a step back.
Because, like, whichever era or lineup you look at, whether it's Jim and Sarenth or Jim, Sarenth, and Storm, or um, when Emily and I and Cabra joined Sarenth, and then when Cabra left and it was Emily and Sarenth and I, there were always very different voices and different personalities and different experiences and different traditions. And so audiences are always going to have their preferences. And, I really like when this person's talking, that person I maybe don't agree with as much, and that kind of thing, which is kind of inevitable. But it's been nice that people have stuck with it.
That has been actually a really big hallmark for me as a creator on this podcast is that the community has embraced change when in so many cases, whether it's co-hosts or format or whatever, I've watched many community spaces completely blow themselves to hell because of backlash or why do things have to change or what have you. It's actually a hallmark of a really healthy community that a lot of this can change out and move around and shift and still be really widely accepted and appreciated and applauded. And I really want to hand it to the communities. And to be clear, AGF is not the only one. Like one of the things that I saw that was really heartening about the Skith Blathnir space was when mods would change over. That was a big deal for those community spaces as well. And so my hat is off to folks who are able to pass the mod hat, who are able to pass leadership, who are able to transition spaces from one place to another, because that is a big deal, both for that community and for the growth of the individual members in that community. And my hope is that as we transition out of a podcast community, like the Discord becomes a place where you can bank your coals, you can light your own fires off of this sacred embers and take it to all the other places as well as bring it back to the community. Um, Especially because we've done so much work to foster community here. It would be sad to just let all that go and to scatter it to the winds. So I am happy that even as we transition forward, um, and I step out of a leadership position, that there are other people stepping forward and an entire group of people willing to take up the embers and then light new fires. That's amazing to me. There's so many communities that do not make this transition.
I mean, some people prefer David Lee Roth and some people prefer Sammy Hagar, but everyone likes Van Halen.
Fuck yeah.
I think actually kind of jumping off that point though, do we want to hit Kunan's other question? All right. So for their other question is, do you have plans or hopes for your copious spare time and attention going forward? And if so, what?
Hang on. So Sarenth can't answer this because Sarenth never has spare time. Never mind
This is very
copious
true.
amounts of spare
All of
time.
you.
So
Really,
for
I
the
think
rest of us, yeah,
for the rest of us, what are we doing? Oh, well, let's see.
I'm going to sleep. I'm going to sleep.
That
That's
is
fair.
that is an
For the
excellent thing.
for the people that know how many emails I've sent because of this show and scripts I've written because of this, I am going to sleep.
You are going to sleep. You're not going to send emails that I know are like at 3 a.m. your time.
Jeez.
I love it when I get up in the morning. I'll check the AGF email, and then I'm just like, what? Just sent. What are you talking about? You can't close this. Why? The file is sending. What's sending? Who else is accessing this? Why?
Come the fuck on. It's either.
Yeah, very fair. Very fair.
Mostly them.
It's mostly them. 100%. But you know what? Fair enough.
I have two modes, don't sleep or only sleep.
Hmm.
As the show wraps up, I will transition from don't sleep into only sleep.
A well-earned rest.
Absolutely. A well-earned rest, and definitely, like, you never know. And that's hopefully also applicable to you, Zarenth, of just like, oh, I can not worry about things every other Saturday or every Saturday. And just
Motherfucker, I got anxiety. There's no not worrying. I will just
I know there's no
transition.
now.
Sarenth worries about days ending and why.
I understand that, but
Oh,
now you
fuck
have the
on.
option to worry about something else.
Emily is nodding.
This is a dadism. My dad coined this.
Dada.
I am a professional worrier.
Mhm.
Quote from my father.
Mm. Um, I mean, as they would say in the wrestling world, to drop kayfabe for a moment, it would be nice to listen to podcasts or watch books and things without having to mentally go. And I need to remember mention this on the podcast because this will be interesting for people, and I can use this for work. Like just engaging with pagan and magical and adjacent material for myself and my practice rather than, and how can I present this to the community and put it in the show, will be nice.
What is that like? So Emily, how about you? Because I'm not going.
Well, if Xanth can keep himself out of the hospital and keep himself well, then I am working with one of my mentors this year and doing more ancestor stuff to hopefully be able to be of more help for the community with people connecting with their ancestors and doing ancestor work. I have some of my own ancestors to do work with as well. And hopefully it might mean that I'm online a little bit more, a little more active, a little more writing, a little more sharing. But we will see. Santh?
I don't know how I should answer this without getting yelled at. No, I'm joking.
There is no way. So answer it and then we will yell.
Well, we'll yell at you regardless, but you can answer.
My attempt
Hmm.
is to try to keep the Saturdays free now for a while.
We
We'll
have
see.
witnesses and we have a recording of this.
Like free for how long?
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
At 22 minutes past 9 p.m. UK time, Sarenth Odinson said, Saturdays will be free.
In 2 weeks, Sarenth will be out of town for a spiritual thing that goes over Saturday and a few other days. So
Yeah, I'm going to be at Midwest Shaman Gathering which is in Ohio. That'll be interesting.
No. We have it on recording. Your Saturdays will be free, so you need to cancel or reschedule.
That's neat. But for the most part, I'm going to try and keep that for family time, for personal time, for uh, me time as much as I possibly can. I think I'm going to try to keep it free for at least 6 months and see what that's like. Wish me luck. I have no idea if that's going to fucking stick. I mean, from the copious amounts of jokes everybody's listening to.
We all know the answer to that.
yeah. I
mean,
would not even give him a month, Sif.
Yeah, Sif in the chat going, I give you 1 month max.
I love this community, and I love that you all will dog the shit out of me for that.
So every Saturday, everyone make sure to message Sarenth on whatever platform you have at hand.
You motherfuckers.
Stop. Go rest. Don't say anything else. No more context. Just the words stop. Go rest. Just message those 3 words to Sarenth every Saturday on whatever platform you have. If you are within physical commuting distance, break into his house and yell it in his face.
Don't say that to Malik. Malik has a key to my fucking house.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time I've recommended that someone within the vicinity break into your house. From the number of times I've gone, Jason, break into his house and fix that damn microphone.
Mhm. This is very true. Yep, this is fine. You don't live that far away, and Saturday mornings, I go, I work out, and then I'll be over by your house.
The big plans or hopes that I have for my copious spare time is actually at some point getting these fucking books finalized, because 2 of them are basically alpha state done. They need to go through beta reading, they need to go through some revisions, and I don't know if I'm going to self-publish it or if I'm going to go through a publisher at this point. Leaning more towards self-publishing. But in general, just the big thing I have on the horizon that I am trying to do is get these damn books finished so that they're no longer a weight on the back of my head.
I mean, if you're not sure if you want to be entirely non-controversial, get AI to finish and publish it. Dramatic pause for effect.
I will
Yeah,
fucking
really.
hunt you down.
So, another question we had.
I seriously though, like I am gonna try my best to just keep my Saturdays as best I can, but I also am open to. I have ADHD and I just roll with it. Like one of my coping skills is to genuinely um take time to write. For me, writing is such a big part of my life that I've tried to put it down and it physically fucking hurts to leave it alone for long periods of time. I have to write something. Even if I'm just writing Shadowrun um, fiction, or if I'm doing poetry, I have to have something. Like I don't know how not to write. I've been writing for so long. So we will see what this transitions into. That's all I can say at this point for
Get
sure.
Emily to sit you down, watch some classic WrestleMania matches, and you can just write reviews for yourself.
There you go. Yeah, I know. I've already filled my free time for after this is all wrapped up. Producer Jason is going on to becoming, as of 4 days ago, I am now also small business owner Jason. So I will be working on that.
You're moving up in the world.
Yes.
Moving up the corporate ladder.
Oh,
We'll see you
gosh.
on Shark Tank soon.
Fantastic. You know what? If I make enough money to end up on Shark Tank, absolutely. I'm all for becoming the next wealthiest pagan in the world.
For international listeners, Shark Tank is the US version of Dragon's Den,
Yes.
which predates Shark Tank.
Okay.
We did it first, much like white people. So another question that we had from Remy. Remy said, what, if anything, has been inspired in your praxis or journey from the show? Everyone's recovering from my white people joke.
Yep.
Oh my god.
They haven't even processed the question.
No, it's good.
It's all right. White people always cause devastation in the Americas.
Yeah, and elsewhere usually.
Well, yeah.
And then, well, I can honestly say, as I kind of talked about on the last episode, the entirety of this show inspired my spiritual practice and journey. So, the entirety of this show played extremely key into how I developed my spiritual practice. But I'll pass it on to everyone else because I already talked about. You want to hear more about that? Listen to last week's episode once I have it done editing, because my goodness, I'm going to be just dumping out the last couple episodes at this point.
That will be episode 154, where we chat with producer Jason.
Yeah.
Emily, how has the show impacted your religious, magical, etc. practice, beliefs, views?
Part of me wants to echo Jason, the entirety of the show, and also tack on the community as well, because seeing how different people in the community has done things in different ways, I'm sure has sparked ideas. Specifically, it is a little harder to pinpoint, um, aside from, like, I know Jason, and I have taken some luck magic lessons from him, and so that has sparked research for me in that area. Using academia.edu to get access to more research papers, and actually taking a little more time to read some research papers about different things, for religious stuff. I think it has gotten me into looking down a lot of different rabbit holes. I would say also because the show introduced me to Sarenth, that in and of itself has had a significant impact on the heathenry part of my practice, the things that we do similar and also the things that we do differently. Um, what about you, Snow?
I mean, I guess if you're gonna sit there and go, well, I met Sarenth, then I guess I have to then sit here and go, well, I guess I met Claire. She's all right. We get on. It works. Um, she bought me this t-shirt I'm wearing of Rosemary, the wrestler from TNA. Had I mentioned that yet? It's really cool. I really like my t-shirt. Um, yeah, no, I mean, hearing people like, I mean, I mentioned Edward Butler on here, and that kind of prompting me to look more into things. Getting a chance to talk to, I mean, I mentioned Justin Sledge and Rev Eric and Polyphones and Marco Visconti and all these people from different magical and religious and spiritual paths and backgrounds and traditions, and that kind of broadening horizons and getting me to check out different things I might not have otherwise. Um, so it, gives you more spices on the rack to cook with, and that's always, I think, very helpful and interesting because some people are very happy to AC/DC this and do the same thing for however long, in the same way that, AC/DC spent 50 years making the same two songs. And I'm more on the David Bowie end of that spectrum. Um, so getting to talk to people from different backgrounds and traditions and stuff, and getting to listen to you guys talk to different people, has had an impact. Yeah. What about you, OG?
What has been inspired in my spiritual practice or journey by the show? I don't think there's anything that's been untouched, really. Um, you could probably point to an episode where somebody came on the show and talked about something, and I went, ooh, and took whatever the lesson was and started bringing it into my practice. When we had Dr. Nordvig on, when it was three heathens um, interviewing him on the show, it was actually really cool to have some affirmations of some of the things that I saw in the lore. That was really neat. It was really cool to have Rune on and dialogue about the animacy of runes. It was really cool to have, and of course, now I've forgotten what Eric, the neuroscientist we brought on to talk about aphantasia. Is the irony of me forgetting the damn name is not lost on me. Um, Martinez, I think. Um, So the
We've
aphantasia.
had a lot of Erics on.
Yeah, yeah, just a few. Uh, so what's been inspired by my spiritual growth by the show? Uh, Tons of stuff. Uh, this community is part of how I was able to transition out of having Galina Kreskova and Sandy as elders and do so in a manner that was both careful and safe. Um, this community has seen me through some amazing times, some dark times, some rising times. This community has been a part of my life for almost 8 years, and the Discord has been around since what did I say, 2020? So a solid 5, almost 6 years. This show has been intertwined with my spiritual journey for the entire time it's been around. I started this show calling myself a shaman and stopped doing that. Uh, I call myself a spirit worker. It's much more apt, it's much more useful. So my identifiers have changed because of this show. I came more into being comfortable with being a non binary, mask presenting person. And my gods, if I didn't have the kind of supportive community here that I do, I don't know that I would have made that transition as healthily. Um, there's nothing in my life that has not been touched by this community, by this show. And I can point to some serious instances of that, like with Nordvig or with Rune or with you, my co-hosts. The fact that you all have stuck with me through thick and thin, through some of the hardest times in my life. This show was one of the things that kept me sane when I was isolating for 9 months during COVID. Um, so it's not a stretch to say that I'm in a much healthier place, in a much better place than I ever would have been if I didn't have this show. Um, how much more isolated, how much less of a person I would be. I can't fathom it. Um, we have had so many wonderful people, and thank you for the heart stuff, yourself included. We have had so many beautiful, wonderful people on this show that I have had the honor to get to know, to love, to cherish, that I would not be the same without it. So, whether whatever place you want to cast your gaze, this show has probably had some kind of impact on me. But what has been inspired? I think if AGF inspired anything, it was community focus. If AGF inspired anything, it was keeping that sacred fire at the forefront of my mind whenever we sat down to do an interview, especially if it was somebody that I vehemently disagreed with or whose worldview completely did not match my own. It was like, what can I do to be a good host? What can I do to be a host specifically around a digital sacred fire? And so that ethic of service, that ethic of hospitality is something that has also kept with me and informs pretty much everything I do.
Absolutely. Um, I will say we're kind of hitting just about an hour and 40 minutes here on the recording. So, anyone else got anything left to say, or are we okay to start wrapping it up?
I mean, I just want to say, as a representative of the show, please don't cast your gaze. Embrace them. Embrace the gaze. Don't cast your gaze.
And pierce the gaze only consensually.
Yes, and sterilize first.
Or use protection.
Um,
Actually, I think some of these discussion questions merit some asking. Like, is there anything any of us wanted to ask each other about our beliefs, practices, studies, etc.? One of the things I have long wanted to ask you, Snow, because watching you grow over the years has been a mighty privilege.
now I'm over 6 foot.
I One of the things that you motherfucker, you're not going to derail me. Uh,
Damn it. Have I
one of
mentioned
the
my t-shirt?
one of the things that I have wanted to ask you is, um, as you have dove deeper into Platonism,
Mm.
what has been the reverberation between the Platonism you studied and your personal practice? Because I know that there is some, but I'm curious to see what ways it's been the most drastically effective or affecting your choice.
Well, I'm glad, as Jason points out the clock, you decide to just throw in a quick short question like that. Um, I mean, I came to Platonism after having looked at Stoicism and trying to adopt different parts of Stoicism. And I think the there's going to be a lot of isms here. Uh, I think the monism that you see in Stoicism and Platonism in various forms and from various thinkers and writers has made a big impact on my practice. And maybe that comes because I got more into Platonism, um, partly through Stoicism and people like Edward Butler, and partly through reading around Hermeticism. That's four isms for those keeping count. Um, and so I would say the way that that's impacted my practice is this sense of God and the gods, and this sense of greater cosmic unity beyond comprehension, and um, trying to observe the cosmos or get glimpses of this greater divinity, um, which, I mean, the overwhelming nature of it, it's kind of mind-boggling when you try and think about it on an intellectual level. And when you try and, I want to say, when you try and feel it, it's kind of emotionally overwhelming as well, to the point where, you kind of end up, or I find I sort of end up sort of feeling so much awe and love that it's kind of that verge of tears kind of feeling. Um, and I think that also impacts, magical work, spirit work, astrology, because it's this idea of everything is pulling on the cosmos's threads. Um, you know, doing ritual is kind of the easy, accessible, day-to-day way to kind of check in with that, but then everything else is kind of bigger parts of the picture. Um, so it feels like there are more ways to engage with divinity than putting out a cup of water in front of a candle, but not necessarily greater or lesser ways, just more ways. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. It does
Cool.
brilliantly.
Thank you.
Jason,
Yes.
one of the things that I have wanted to ask you about your practice has been the impact of luck magic and finding community. Because holy fucking shit, my dude, you went from who is this tall motherfucker who's showing up to discussion nights to this is a very dear friend. And that for me has been an amazing transition. that I absolutely know was wrapped up in your damn luck magic.
Uh, I won't say it's completely unrelated. And no, and it's exactly the same, and I kind of feel the same way towards you, Samantha. It's just like, wow, this person has runes on their arms. What the heck? I don't know anything about this, and they're going off, and they're passionate about this. Okay, cool, neat. I'm lost. Um, uh, to someone that I'm just like, I haven't gone over to Sarence in a little while. Maybe I should plan a day trip. Um, and as
3 hours later, we should actually go fix that mic.
We should 3 hours later should go fix that mic. 2 hours later, as I'm trying to leave, doing the proper Midwest goodbye. Um, I think as far as like how it's impacted community is when as I have spent time working on luck magic, as I've spent time digging into it and learning more about it, to say that luck magic is like a disconnected thing, it doesn't tie into anything else, would be strictly incorrect. It relies on those connections. It relies on how people interact with one another. One thing that I talk about when I discuss luck magic a lot is luck is great, however, free will exists. Like it doesn't. There's always an impact there. That if you're not accounting for it, then you're just going to get sidelined for it, and luck can maybe help smooth that out. But again, it's free will, and when it comes to the more community aspect of how I ended up just finding people and just lucking into it, I mean, I go back to how I got into this community in the first place. I was living in Los Angeles. I was living in Los Angeles, California. And out of the blue, I started talking to my now wife again. We had talked, kind of knew each other in college, and then just something drove me to it to start talking with them again. Out of the blue. Nothing caused it, nothing triggered it. It was just a call for reconnection. And then I moved back to Michigan. And then by happenstance, I end up on a weekend shift working with Malik and Mother Multiverse. And it's like, well, start talking about stories, start talking about the weird things that happen. And then it's just like, well, do you want to get into some weird stuff? Do you want to change your life forever? Let's talk about magic. And it's like, how does that happen? I don't know how that happens. It was the great cosmic coincidence, which, as many people, the wonderful word, you'll hear it in metaphysical spaces all the time, which is, yeah, what a coincidence. Isn't that crazy how that just happened? Isn't that crazy how everything lined up perfectly and in such a way to end up where you are? And, you know, maybe you call it fate. You can call it fate if you want to. Maybe it's luck. I call it luck, and for myself in that particular circumstance, because it's wild the ways that I ended up to where I am in so many different things. And to say it's like, well, what part of that was luck? It's like, I can't say for certain. I don't 100% know. But to say that it wasn't involved would be very wrong. um, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling now.
I guess if we're playing, what do we want to ask each other that we haven't had the chance to on the show? Emily, as time has gone on, in my observations, as a byproduct of living to of living with our resident Grimfrost representative, you've become progressively more heathenized. So I guess could you talk about that, and do you feel stretched or torn between comedic stuff and heathen stuff, or does it feel all kind of intertwined? How has that been for you?
I definitely have given more time and focus to the heathen side of things. I still feel like my worldview and my home starts with Cometicism. And I am hoping to act on that a little bit more in the coming months. But my practical practice has been a lot more with heathen spirits as well as with pack tradition spirits. A lot of land vatir work, a lot of ancestor stuff, and some of it, and Kemetic spirits are involved in things and on my mind, but I have done a lot less Kemetic ritual than I would like, and so I'm hoping to reestablish that balance. That being said, the last 2 Wednesday mornings, I've also had dreams involving Odin. So we will see how the balance goes moving forward. But I am hopeful. The plan is to allocate a little bit more, allocate a little bit more time for some personal Kemetic rituals because it is a little bit more challenging in this household, as great as it is, to make time for proper Kemetic rituals in addition to the all of the fly by the seat of the pants heathen stuff that needs to be done.
Well, when you get around to doing those Kemetic rituals, if the heathen household won't work, the at least partially Kemetic household is more than willing.
I don't know if you realize, Jason. Obviously,
Mhm.
I don't share the same year, but I do share a birth date with your
Mhm.
lovely spouse.
I am aware that you share a birthday with my
And
spouse.
I am very hopeful that we can do some Kemetic work together. You have also sent me down the rabbit hole of reading about uh, Kemetic deities that are
With
connected to
the-
fortune.
yeah,
So,
it's
like,
wild. It is a rabbit hole and a half. I
because
would.
my luck work had a Kemetic overlay when I experienced it,
Mhm.
I'm very excited to look into how it looks through that perspective.
I'm 100% down, and I know uh, very
I am
vaguely in the
excited. We will
background.
have to, hopefully, some of the Saturdays we might schedule some of that.
I'm good. I'm good with
Maybe
that. I'm
for
sure.
that.
I'm sure Corinne's game with that. I know. We've been talking about trying to do more comedic based stuff
Hmm.
with her workings with like Boston Sekhmet. So
I would
it would
very
be
much, I'm
and
all for that.
and if you can parse any of how fortune works in comedicism, please tell me. Because
Yes,
it is a
we have to
rat.
have some conversations because I have a lot of thoughts on that. I have done
It is
a
such
lot of
a freaking rabbit hole.
it very much is. But yeah, Snow, one of my regrets is that because I live with Saranth and on the
End of
show
sentence.
there's a lot of heathen overlay stuff that goes on. A lot of people don't realize that my home base is Kemeticism. Like my Kemetic gods fostered me out to the heathen gods. So I have a lot of deep and working and loving relationships with heathen gods and spirits. But my family home base is with Kemeticism. And I feel like I've done them a disservice in not making that very clear. And so I'm hoping to rectify that in the future.
I think that one of the things I've been meaning to ask you, specifically in context of the show, Emily, is where are the most fruitful intersections you've had between your different pathways? I think that's something that we've talked on and off about the show, and one of those things that, as somebody who came to the heathen gods when I first started worshiping the heathen gods, I was first worshiping Anubis. It's one of those things that, like, oh, you know, they're not part of my core worldview anymore, but like, there's this kind of almost like we're here. But
Uh, I'm not sure if I understand the fruitful.
so like one of the things that I'm curious about is there fruitful dialogue between the Kemetic and heathen worldview? I mean, especially now that you're dipping into stuff like luck magic, is there intersections that you're finding that weren't there before? And if so, where are they?
Are there intersections? Yes. Um, where are they? I am not sure if that is something I can answer in the moment.
That's
I
fair.
am very much reminded of the number of times that I have started out doing a certain thing. Like, I am going to do this comedic thing for this practice, and then had heathen spirits break in or pack spirits break in, or I am doing this pack thing and had comedic spirits break in. It is a, you can try to have those boundaries, and with certain things those boundaries are necessary to start, but realizing that the spirits will cross things in their own ways. I try to approach spirits in the way that I think they would most like to be approached, or in what I think is most familiar for them. But I am also an American in 2025, so it is what it is.
Appreciate
What is
that.
going to work is what is going to work. Learning to play the mouth harp was huge for me in connecting with spirits, and that's not even something that I picked up from Cometicism or heathenry. Working with the trolls and my Scythe work, and looking to see how my Scythe work, how non-heathen spirits want to participate in my Scythe work going forward, is an interesting thing. That has been a very, something that has somewhat around the edges. It has definitely happened, and I'm interested to see how it goes moving forward. Also looking at when I do Heka and how that is different from Scythe, and trying to better define it for myself, as well as when I do the thing and everything kind of overlaps in different ways, and it's just how I do magic. So I don't know if that is a helpful answer or not, but that is the answer that I have at the moment.
100%. Yeah, that actually does. That to me is the kind of fruitful dialogue that I was aiming towards. I'm really excited to see how this unfolds, especially between your Heka and your Sather. If for nothing else, than from a personal interest perspective, because um, it's really neat to see.
And like,
As
I also
as
have, oh, go ahead, Snow.
oh no, go on.
I was just gonna say, I also have a God spouse relationship that is not in any of those. And so that has brought in other spirits, and trying to figure out how all of that fits in has been interesting and challenging as well. But Cometicism is what I consider to be where my worldview, the lens of worldview, where I usually start. That's my home base. That's where I feel most comfortable. But go ahead, Snow.
I was going to say, as some of the people in our chat have alluded to, Emily, these would be great topics for you to write about on your blog.
I am very, very aware. And I'm hopeful I might have to have Saranth like sit me down on some of those Saturdays when he works on his book, and I can body double
Coffee
and work on
date.
my blog. Coffee date, library date.
Mm-hmm.
I
Get him
love how
to
our dates
throw
are like
questions at you.
working. What'd you say, Snow?
Get him to throw questions at you, and you have to sit down and actually write down your answers.
That's a thought.
And then you have blog post material. You just
There
have
you
to polish
go.
it and edit it.
Oh, you mean interviewing you in a different format? Sir, you should rest. You're right. That means I should definitely interview my partner. Make
I mean,
content.
to be fair, the number of our dates that are let's go out so Saranth can work on his blog. Let's go out so we can figure out what we want to present at Convocation next year.
Oh, 100%. 100%. It's nice. I likes it.
Did anyone else have any other questions or topics or
I think we are starting the wrap up.
okay, in that case, Mr. Odinson,
Mm,
could you have the last word on the last episode of Around Grandfather Fire?
it has been a genuine honor, a privilege. It has been my joy to serve the communities that I am part of for these past almost 8 years. I'm just going to call it 8 years. It has been a beautiful time tending this sacred fire, growing this community. It has been beauty. It has been truly growing Megan and Haminga, personal as well as group luck, power to do this show. It has been a truly, I am amazed at the body of work we have collectively put out for these 8 years. I am so overjoyed that so many people have found community, connection, relationships, shit, myself included, through this sacred fire that we have kept burning for 8 fucking years. It has been an amazing journey, and I am so grateful to everybody who has shared this fire. The brother that I lit this fire with, the sister I kept this fire going with everybody who has come around, my loved ones around the sacred fire, the community that has grown and will continue to grow, that will take the embers from this sacred fire and light new fires, maybe a new fire down the road. I don't know. I'm not going to put anything on top of this. I'm not going to put anything in front of it. But what I will look behind at as this sacred fire does go out is pride and joy that we had it, is the beauty and the sacredness of reciprocity that everybody who came around this fire, who gave their time, their energy, their effort, who gave their attention, who gave their time to community, who gave vulnerability. It has been an honor, a pleasure, and a joy to have lit this sacred fire It has been such a huge part of my life, and I am so very grateful to each and every one of you, each and every one of my co-hosts, Snow, Emily, Cabra, Caitlin, Jim, to producer Jason, to everybody who has ever listened, to everybody who will listen. If you have found this show for the first time and you're sad that the fire is out, don't be. This is 155 episodes of connection and beauty. It is okay to grieve as we go. It is okay to show love and appreciation for the fires that have been, but bring these embers into your own heart and walk forward. That is the reciprocity that you can give to the sacred fire that has kept us all warm these last 8 years. And I want to especially thank the gods, the ancestors, and the Vetir who inspired this fire to be lit, who lit this fire with us, who have walked every one of these 8 years with us, and who will walk with us into the future. The holy ones that walk with us, before us, behind us, and beside us, named and unnamed. The ones that walk with us, before us, behind us, and beside us, named and unnamed. Thank you all for the final time. Thank you all for joining us around the fire.